And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. Next to me, as always, is my beautiful co-host, Laraib, as we are here to break down week 9 of the NFL season. Rare Friday film. So this is taking place on Halloween. Happy Halloween to those who celebrate. As you can see, we are not in costume because we are boring. We had a big Halloween thing last week. So what is the Pelican in the back. That's in every episode. Yeah, he
Hey,
says
I'm
stuff.
just trying to keep it festive around here all
I
year long.
I appreciate that. So, but one of the perks of us filming on a Friday morning is we did get to watch the Thursday night game last week. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna quickly recap that Thursday night game, go over some of the big news that came from that game, and then go straight into this week 9 slate. Four teams on bye, two good teams, two bad teams. We have the Browns, Jets, Eagles, and Buccaneers all on bye week this week. And starting to get these buys out of the way so we can get into a lot of fun NFL football. We're officially at the halfway mark, Larob. The picks right now, 5-3-1. I am currently leading through 8 weeks.
5-2 to 1.
Oh, my bad. I gave you a
Mm,
maybe it's a
mm.
premonition for this week coming up. Maybe I just don't feel too confident about this slate of games. But definitely, getting back on track last week, Larob. So let's just go ahead. Let's
Barely.
let's hop right into last night's game, Larob. The Ravens beat the Dolphins 28-6. Lamar Jackson's first game back since hurting his hamstring against the Chiefs, and he looked outstanding. Four touchdown passes, moving the ball on the ground really well, and the whole offense just seemed elevated, right? You know, and that's what I was talking about in our Thursday Night Football preview. Miami had a weird once in a blue moon game last week, and then that Ravens defense really stepped up, even though there was a awful, awful tripping call on Ollie Gordon in the first half that basically wiped away a promising Miami drive. Um, but overall, the Ravens defense stepped up really well. The secondary really bottled up the run game for the Dolphins, and Tua, yikes. So a lot of credit to the Ravens there. They showed up, they showed out. We both thought, it was going to be a. I thought the Dolphins would cover it. Thank God I didn't make that my best bet. You thought it'd be more of a blowout. So, any big takeaways from the game for you, Larob?
Um, I mean, not really. I mean, this was just, hey, Lamar's coming back and the Ravens are going to steamroll. I think if they were playing anyone else, it would have been the same sort of outcome. Now, with the other team scored a little bit more points, really tested this Ravens defense a little bit more. Yes. But in this case, you got to go to Miami, beat up on this awful Dolphins team, and now they're sitting one game behind the Steelers. And when we thought I especially thought their season was done. They're clawing right back, and so it's going to be interesting to see how they continue to build that dynamic. Of course, Lamar doesn't have the huge rushing stats in that game. I don't know if that's the game script really called for that in this one, or the injury was still bothering him, but that's something to continue to harp on. But I know the bigger thing that you want to talk about in this scenario is the Dolphins firing their GM and supposedly keeping on Mike McDaniel for the rest of the season.
Right. And so we just found out maybe about an hour before we started filming. Dolphins fire GM Chris Greer, longtime Dolphins general manager. After that game, this was a decision that, in my opinion, was well overdue. And a lot of people were like, this is, the sign of a total house call or a house cleaning, right? But instead, it was just Chris Greer. And we find out that Mike McDaniel is safe, at least for the rest of the season moving forward, which I think is the right move, Laura, because what we have seen is Mike McDaniel coming in, obviously inherited a good team from Brian Flores. Brian Flores treated pretty unfairly on his way out, built a good roster with Chris Greer at the helm, right? But Mike McDaniel inherited it, had Tua playing some of the best football he possibly could. But with all the injuries, all the inconsistency, Tua with just the continued concussion, all everything going on around the team, it kept feeling like this kept falling at the feet of Mike McDaniel when really there were just some crazy personnel decisions that this team kept on making and kept on failing, right? Just the destruction of the offensive line, right? And obviously it doesn't help Teron Armstead retiring at the beginning of the season. But not moving off of guys at the right time, the whole Tyreek Hill saga and the drama when we find out that more weapons on the outside, that you're paying all your cap towards, two receivers and the quarterback, you're not able to properly allocate those resources elsewhere. We see the Chiefs trade away Tyreek Hill, and they're able to allocate those resources to more important positions because they have confidence in their quarterback, and it propels them forward, right? So I just don't think that Chris Greer, he needed to go. I think McDaniel is still a very capable offensive play schemer, and it would be hard for me to let him walk out of the building considering what he's shown he can do. And I see a lot of coaches all around the league who aren't able to formulate good offensive game scripts, right? And even though this year has been super choppy, obviously the personnel isn't there. Tyreek Hill gets injured yet again. You've guys always in and out of the lineup. Tua's inconsistency. I just feel like they are moving in the right direction. Now it'll be interesting to see who comes in to replace Greer. I really would hope that they look outside the building and just don't hire internally. But overall, I think it's a good day for Dolphins fans, obviously after another tough loss, but moving in the right direction, getting a new plan in early so they can move forward and a guy can properly assess the roster towards the end of the season and start building come draft time. Definitely, trade deadline is next week, Laraib. So moving off of your GM is interesting, the timing of it now, because they are probably the biggest candidate for being sellers at the deadline. So I wonder if this affects any of those decisions that will be made on guys like Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Minka Fitzpatrick. There's a lot of guys who can be dealt. And if you want to just tear this whole thing down and look forward to the years to come.
Yeah, I think this next coming week is going to be really interesting to see how this team develops, especially going to the offseason. How much is Mike McDaniel, going to stick around? Are they going to really allow him to craft this team? And that's really going to show who he is as a head coach, right? Is he just going to be that, that great offensive mind who can scheme up things for your quarterback, who can, design great plays? Or is he someone who can be a true leader of a team, help in the draft process, care about a defense, craft a defense? And I think that's going to be really interesting to see, this next week and coming into the draft next April. But definitely a move in the right direction. Chris Greer was with the Dolphins since 2000. I think he was started GM since 2016, but he's been around that organization for a quarter of a century. And I think it was time for the horse to be taken out to the pasture, if you know what I mean. And that's exactly what
Mickey
they did.
Loomis.
Yeah, maybe he's next on the chopping block after what is going to be a really tough week for the Saints. But no, move in the right direction. Now, this is a thought I've been having for the past couple of weeks. Mike McDaniels is if you had like a supermodel girlfriend and y'all both went out to a high-end restaurant, but then y'all both got food poisoning and you both shit yourself at the table. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm Tua Tagovailoa and Mike McDonald is a supermodel girlfriend. You
Okay.
both shit yourself in public at a restaurant. At what point can you continue to say that relationship can be continued to foster, And the restaurant is a Miami Dolphins organization. Uh, and so at what point is the shitting yourself in public too much to where you can go back to that restaurant? And so can he stay there in Miami, or is he going to be like Chris Greer and need a change of scenery? That was just something I was thinking about for the past couple of weeks. I don't want to get off my chest.
So is Chris Greer the chef
So
who served them the poisoned
Chris Greer
food?
was the chef who was intentionally poisoning the food.
Okay, and Tua is
I'm
the
Tua in this situation.
so what? Why are you in this situation? You just
Well,
want a
it's just
supermodel
a
girlfriend?
hypothetical if I had a supermodel girlfriend, yes.
Okay, and okay. Needless to say, this is a marriage that will probably come to a swift end this offseason, for the betterment of Miami. Now, Tua, could he be a reclamation project? Like we see a lot of these quarterbacks in a new system with a new offensive system. Potentially, right? He's shown high level football in his career. It's just the injuries and the health concerns that really are holding him back. And then just some of these weird games where it's like, all right, three interceptions and just looking awful. So maybe a change of scenery is what he needs as well. I'm not ready to call write Tua off But in the right system, perhaps he could be able to revive his career. But moving on with Mike McDaniel as the guy seems like the best move. If you were to keep anyone there, I would keep him before anyone else. In terms of quarterback, coach, GM, seems like that's this direction that they're going in. But Laraib, enough on that. Let's go ahead and let's dive right in to our 5 course meal. Hopefully that won't be poison making us defecate on ourselves. Going straight into our games for week 9 of the NFL season, starting off with the noon slate. We have the Indianapolis Colts traveling to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers. Colts are 3.5 point favorites on the road here. And Colts team 7-1, one of the best. I saw they have the best uh, cover rate in in terms of how much they cover by off the Vegas spreads. Best like in league history since they've been tracking these numbers. So clearly they're breaking the mold for what the expectations were for this team going into this season. We've talked about them all season long, how impressive this offense has been. Shane Steichen, Daniel Jones, Jonathan Taylor, just this, elite offensive machine they've been able to create. Now going into Pittsburgh, where that second half for Pittsburgh last week was brutal. Josh Jacobs, Jordan Love really got back on track, and they were able to move the ball at will against that Steelers team last week. So looking for more of the same this week, Laraber. How can the Steelers defense and Mike Tomlin get back on track?
Yeah, and that defense has been awful this year. They have played 7 games and they've given up 30 points 4 times. And so the only thing you can say for them in this game is they just need this game really badly. Coming off a 2-game skid, the Ravens, you just saw them thrash the Dolphins on Thursday Night Football, and that horse is slowly starting to creep back up behind you. And so in this spot, when you're at home once again facing Daniel Jones, who hasn't played outside much this year, the elements is the one thing that's going to help you in this game. Can you make this a tough, smash mouth game, defensive battle? You haven't done that all season long, but if you're able to do that in this one, we know this Colts secondary can be exposed, and Aaron Rodgers, he still has his legs a little bit. I'm only doing this because I have to pick an upset, and the Steelers are
Oh,
going to be my
okay,
upset for this
okay.
week. I mean, in what world can this Steelers defense hold up against Jonathan Taylor, against Michael Pittman and that trio of receivers? It's going to be a really tough task, but I pray Mike Tomlin is going to juice up his guys, gas up his guys in this one, um, and they find a way to win 26-23.
It's so funny how things flip, right? Aaron Rodgers, his whole career, ever since he won a Super Bowl in 2010, right? It's been, oh, the situation, the defense is always letting him down. He gets in these great situations, but then he can't keep up against these other offenses, just picking apart his own defense. And finally, he goes to the one place where over the past, our entire lifetime, they couldn't figure out quarterback after Ben, and the defense was the one who was keeping them afloat, keeping them to all these good records. And now the moment Aaron Rodgers gets there, and Aaron Rodgers is still playing pretty well for what our expectations were entering this season, the defense is letting him down again. So they really do need, like what you're talking about, they need that inclement weather, that Pittsburgh AFC North football to really start to come. So maybe that gives them a boost. But what we really have seen is we've never seen a Steelers defense start this anemic to a season, right? You mentioned the 30+ point games, but the rush defense has been the bigger concern, right? Giving up over 110 rushing yards per game, which is by far the worst mark in Mike Tomlin's career as the head coach for Pittsburgh. Even when they had those big Ben flying offenses back in the day and their defense wasn't as good, they were still good against the run. They just weren't great in the back end, right? But this year, it's kind of all over the field, right? Jalen Ramsey, he's had some good moments, some bad moments this year, but pretty inconsistent on the outside. And then just the pass rush really hasn't gotten there this season so far. And against this Colts offensive line, I don't think the weather is going to be that big of a factor in this game. 57 degrees at noon, no real
That's gonna be
winds or anything.
a little chilly for Daniel
Ooh.
Jones.
I think this Colts offense is going to roll the Steelers defense. Now, the bigger question will be, can Aaron Rodgers keep up? And I just don't think so. I really do like the Colts in this spot. Give me Indianapolis 42 to Pittsburgh 30.
Where has TJ Watt been? That's been my one big question for this Steelers team. Can he show up in this big game in a huge spot and turn around for them? I don't think so, Jim. But let's move on to another game.
Wait, what's
We
the
have,
score?
oh, I said it earlier, 26 to 23. Chris Boswell
The
shoots.
Boz.
He shoots four field goals in this one, and they win.
Wow.
But let's move on to another 12 o'clock game. We have the Denver Broncos going to Houston to play the Texans. The Texans favored by 1.5 points. This line has a little bit fluctuated a little bit. I think it originally opened at Broncos 2.5. Then it moved to Texans 2.5, and now we're sitting at a tic-tac zone of 1.5, Lewis. And I just think this Texans team is getting a little bit too much credit for getting to play a beaten up 49ers team from last week. And we know what happens when CJ Stroud gets sacked this year. If he gets sacked three or more times, they are 0-3. And guess what? The Broncos lead the league in sacks by I think more than 8 or 10 than the second place squad. And so even with Pat Surtain not out there, Nick Bonito and company will be all over in CJ Stroud's face. And I think they're going to have a really tough time moving the ball. And then on the other side for Bo Nix, they did get to beat up on a really bad Cowboys defense from last week, but you can still trust their engine a little bit more than you can CJ Stroud and that anemic offensive line. I got to roll with the Broncos in this one.
And that's the thing. Not only has the Denver defense led the league in sacks, but the Denver offense last in taking sacks as well, which against this Houston defense, which has been playing still really good football. I just think last week you mentioned was a case of this San Francisco defense finally starting to fall apart, right? You can only mismatch and figure things out, but when you lose your two best defensive players, it's just going to be so hard for you to overcome week after week after week. And Houston with a lot of, familiarity with that 49ers scheme. Probably should have seen that one coming. Didn't bet on it last week or didn't pick the Texans in that spot. But this week, I'm not going to be fooled by what the Texans did. I just think that although I don't think what we saw from the last 5 quarters of Bo Nix is who Bo Nix is, even though you could say a game like that kind of builds that chemistry, that confidence for a young quarterback, I just don't really think that that's going to translate into it's going to be as good this game, but on the inverse, I've seen CJ Stroud be overwhelmed by good defense way too many times this year. They still can't run the ball, and I just don't see Nico Collins coming back first week off the injury, even with no Pat Surtain. I think this defense is still very well equipped to handle what Houston can throw at them, and I have Denver winning in a very close game. I have Denver winning 16 to 13 on the road.
And I'm going to go ahead and pick the Broncos 23 to 17. Yeah, I think even with Nico Collins back, Woody Marks coming up late on the injury report. Without him, it's going to be a lot of Nick Chubb and tick, tick, tick on that clock, little bro. Let's move on to probably the game of the week. We have the Kansas City Chiefs going to Buffalo to play the Bills, and the Chiefs favored by 2.5 on the road, Lewis. And the big thing in this game, no Ed Oliver. He is out for the Bills with a torn bicep. That may be a huge injury, rest of season for the Bills. And so already a defense who has given up the second most rushing yards, losing their best defensive lineman. The good thing is the Chiefs can't run the ball. And so this is going to be a battle of the two quarterbacks and which defense is going to step up in this spot.
And interestingly enough for the Chiefs in this game, still no Josh Simmons dealing with off the field issues. He's not going to play in this game. And Trey Smith, who didn't play in last week, is expected to play in this game. But how capable is he going to be? That will be determined. So obviously, Ed Oliver is a huge difference maker, but you're kind of missing guys on both lines. So that matchup's going to be very interesting for Buffalo, whose defense really did step up last week, albeit against Andy Dalton and the Panthers. But that's the biggest thing that we were looking for this the first part of the season. Where has this Sean McDermott Bills defense gone? And especially in these big spots, right? We've seen them let this team down year after year after year. But the thing about this game that really interests me is we've seen this story so many times before, right? Bills Chiefs match up in the regular season. Bills end up beating the Chiefs. Then come postseason, Chiefs come out, they beat the Bills, and all this hoopla of Josh Allen, maybe he's the best quarterback, gets snuffed out really quickly. And I'm not saying, oh, maybe the Chiefs should lose this game so they can, beat the Bills come playoff time. Obviously, you want to win every game. And but both these teams aren't in the classic position that they normally are in this point in the season when they meet, right? It's always they're far and ahead in the lead in their divisions. And either game, like the Chiefs last year when they played the Bills, this was their first loss of the regular season. And the Bills at this point were coming in with only two losses, both miles ahead of every other team in their division. Now, neither of them are leading their divisions currently. That would be the Patriots in the AFC East and the Broncos in the AFC West. And the Chiefs already, taking a lot of lumps early on in the season. Yeah, they found their way, but both teams really need this game to stay afloat in their conference and their division to try to get that home field playoff advantage that's helped them out so much in the past. So for me, picking on who's going to win this game, I'm going to favor the home team in this one. I'm going to favor Buffalo. They haven't really had that big statement win since week one against the Bills. They haven't had, they've had dropped some very winnable games. The game against the Patriots was very winnable. They let go. The game against the Falcons, just a lot of mental mistakes, a lot of losing guys. I don't think this Chiefs team is going to exploit their biggest weakness, which is the rush defense. So I think it's going to be a lot on Mahomes in this passing game, which albeit has been very successful. But I think Josh Allen and what they're able to do running the ball, James Cook had his best game of the season last week. I think they continue to build on that. And this is the spot where they beat the Chiefs in the regular season and everything's looking nice, everything's looking crispy until the Chiefs come back come playoff time, in which we know we'll see that again this year. But as of now, Bills are going to win their Super Bowl of the regular season matchup against the Chiefs. I have the Bills winning this one 27-24.
Bills, four straight regular season games against the Kansas City Chiefs, but the thing is, for me, this Chiefs team, Lewis, they just look different this part of the season from where they were to start the season. 31 zip against the Raiders, 28-7 against the Commanders. Okay, maybe not the best teams in the world, but Patrick Mahomes has been able to get whatever he wants offensively since Rashee Rice came back. And Brashad Smith, remember the name. He's going to have a monster game. I think Pacheco dealing with some sort of knee injury. That means a lot of Kareem Hunt. I think they're going to go with the young rookie Brashad Smith. He's going to exploit this Bills defense for what they are, and that is fraudulent. And then on the other side, James Cook, this Chiefs defense, if they can't stop the pass, one thing they can do is stop the run. I believe they have been top five in rush defense this year. I think James Cook is going to struggle a little bit. And we know these Bills wideouts aren't world beaters out there. I think the Chiefs put out a statement that they still run the AFC and they win this game 34-27.
Dang, big statement for the Chiefs in that spot. I just think no matter what, this can be a really exciting game. It's always going to come down to the end. But I think Buffalo is in a more dire spot to need this game. They have a lot of more winnable games in the season, but they need to make a statement here, and I think they will. Let's move on to our final highlighted game. We have Sunday Night Football, or the Seahawks traveling to Washington to face the Commanders. Jayden Daniels back as the starting quarterback this week after he missed last game against Kansas City. Seahawks coming off a bye week, so that definitely allows them to get some of their guys back and in position. Big thing for me is we talked about this before the show. I was like, oh, at least Terry McLaurin's back. They're like, no, he's still injured. This Commanders team, it just feels very year from hell. And they had some impressive victories earlier on in the season, but they've never really been able to compete against the bigger dogs. They've gotten embarrassed in a lot of these big matchups. And with Seattle coming off a bye in this one, it's really their defense that has been dropping the ball a lot recently. Even though they had a pretty impressive first half against the Chiefs last week, it just all kind of fell apart. Now on a short week, playing a team off a bye, just a tough spot for Washington. And although I think Jayden Daniels could have some success in this game in the air, just doesn't have the requisite weapons on the outside to really take advantage of a Seahawks pass defense, which is still, getting some guys back, right? We still haven't seen a lot of Nick Eamon-Ward. We don't know if he's going to come play in this game or not. And then Witherspoon been in and out of the lineup. He is still questionable in this game as well. So if those guys are able to come back with the long rest, I just can't see the way that the Commanders can get sustained drives and get consistent points on the board. Whereas this Seahawks team really finding their rhythm offensively, running the ball. Obviously, JSN has had an outstanding season on the outside. Darnold really trusting him, but don't really love the pass rush here for the Commanders. It's underrated. I think it's been a above average group. But if the Seahawks are able to run the ball and then hit play action, bombs down the field to JSN, I think they have a game script. Whereas I just don't love the Commanders' game script in this game.
Yeah, I mean, what has been this consistent factor for this Commanders team and just hasn't been there this year? Like you mentioned, year from hell. Your quarterbacks are constantly rotating. Your number one wide receiver, who sat out a lot of training camp for his new contract, he has been in and out of the lineup. Your defense is really old. I mean, Bobby Wagner revenge game is one factor I'm looking at, but
Ooh.
I just want to hark back to the last time a young, high-flying Seahawks defense went into Washington and played a young Washington Commanders quarterback, and there was or was not a major injury for that quarterback.
What are
Maybe
you trying
Jaden
to say in
Daniels,
this game?
maybe
What are you
Jaden
trying to?
Daniels decides to sit this one out, big boy.
Oh,
I think the
man.
Seahawks are being disrespected after coming off a bye,
They're
playing this shitty
favored.
Commanders team who are on a short week and only favored by 2.5 points.
Oh.
I think the Seahawks put the belt to ass in this one. I think the Seahawks win 31-13.
Yeah, we agree on that one. I have the Seattle as well in this game. I don't think it's going to be that much of a blowout. I think it's going to be Seahawks 30 to Commanders 23. But like I said, I mean, Seahawks are a little disrespected. You are correct when it comes to the national media coverage and really giving them the spotlight. I think a lot of it is just they saw week one how bad Darnold looked against the Niners, and they're like, "Yep, that's the Seahawks for you. Can't trust Darnold," which you really can't. And but this game after Halloween, pumpkins kind of go back in the closet, go back into the patch, right? Throw them out. They're starting to rot. So maybe Darnold has a solid game here, which I think he will. I think this offense will find some good rhythm. But let's move on. That will be all of our highlighted games of the week, Laraib. Let's now rip through the rest of this slate, going back to the noon games, starting with the Chicago Bears traveling to Cincinnati to face the Bengals. Chicago, 2.5 point favorites in this spot, playing a Cincinnati team that just lost to the previously winless Jets. Who do you like in this game?
I gotta go with Chicago. I mean, this Bengals defense, Lewis, first in points allowed, first in rushing yards allowed, and third in passing yards allowed. What's his face? Caleb Williams. If you can't have a good game in this week, yeah, I don't know if you're getting to be fit to be NFL starting quarterback caliber. And then on the other side, Joe Flacco dealing with the AC joint injury in his shoulder. It's kind of gearing up to where he will play. But banged up Joe Flacco and a really bad Bengals defense. I got to roll with the Bears. I'm gonna pick the Bears 31-24.
The Bears need this game after how just awful they looked last week against Baltimore with no Lamar. They really need this game to bounce back. And Caleb Williams last in the league in expected completion percentage, which means guys are open. He's not hitting them. So this is a spot where guys are going to be wide open. Just hit your targets. All roads lead where?
To Kyle Monangai, DeAndre Swift did
Okay,
not
what?
practice 2 days in a row. Fire up the Kyle Monangai train.
Fire it up. Let's move on now to the Minnesota Vikings traveling to Detroit to face the Lions. Lions 9.5 point favorites in this spot, and he's back. JJ McCarthy after his phantom injury, or some might call it a soft benching, returns in this game against Detroit. And all the noise around JJ McCarthy this season has just been super, super weird. And now that he's returning the lineup, is he healthy? Has he been healthy this whole time? Carson Wentz apparently was super injured the past few games and just kept toughing it out. Now is like, you know what? I have a kid on the way. I'm getting surgery. I'm done with this clown show. And them knowing that, all the team, they were still throwing Wentz out there just to get destroyed. It just doesn't seem like they have faith in McCarthy. And this Vikings team has just been an absolute circus at quarterback, considering the two biggest dark horse guys playing super well this season, Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, were both on this roster last year, and you got rid of both of them. And now you're going with JJ McCarthy. and this spot, going to Detroit. I just think this is going to be an absolute shellacking. I just think this Vikings team has lost faith in the leadership over there. And it's going to take I just cannot see JJ McCarthy, let alone winning this game in Detroit, but playing well enough to cover. I have Detroit ramrodding the Vikings in this one, 41-13.
Yeah, this front running Lions team, they smell blood in the water. And after what happens to the Vikings last week, I mean, even when their quarterback was not playing that well, their defense, Lewis, they got sort of exposed in that one. And so I think Jared Goff coming off a bye, ARSB, no longer on my fantasy team, unfortunately. But they got the whole plethora of guys over there. It's going to be in Detroit. That stadium is going to be rocking. I think this can be a little bit too much for JJ McCarthy. I agree with you. The Lions win 34-13.
All right, now we have the Carolina Panthers traveling to Green Bay to face the Packers. Only one win difference between these two teams, but a monster 13.5 point spread here for the Packers. Bryce Young looking like he is going to return in this game after missing last week, and Andy Dalton looked miserable against the Bills. But the biggest thing with the Panthers has been all season long, they're a wholly different team on the road than they are at home. And this game, traveling to Green Bay, is a nightmare scenario for these Panthers. Even though I think they might have some success, totally elevating Rico Dowdle. They tried, Chuba Hubbard coming back. He wasn't that successful. Going back to Dowdle, who's led them to the most offensive success, I think is the right move. But it's not going to be enough going on the road to Green Bay here, who I thought really found their stride in the second half against Pittsburgh last week. And I think this team is now going to just start to roll at this point. Give me the Packers in this one, 30-15.
Yeah, Panthers on the road, and like you mentioned, Packers really found their footing in that second half against an inferior opponent like this. We saw them struggle against Cleveland earlier in the season. Is this going to be one of those type of games? I don't think so.
Wow.
Give me the Packers at 34-10.
All right, next game up, Laura, we have the Los Angeles Chargers traveling to Tennessee to face the Titans. Chargers 9.5 point favorites on the road here. Not much to say for me in this game. I think since Joe Alt's been back, this Chargers offense has looked like a much better unit, and I think they throttle this whimpering Titans team. Give me the Chargers 33-10.
Yeah, I have written down Joe Alt playing. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Chargers 33-13.
All right, next one up, Rob. We have the Atlanta Falcons traveling to New England to face the Patriots. Patriots 5.5 point favorites here at home. Michael Penix is returning for the Falcons in this game. Who do you like here, Larob?
I got to go with the Patriots. This Falcons team, Lewis, I'm just give you some quick stats. They were 0-4 when they're playing outdoors, and their losing margin is by a whopping 19.5 points. You would be stupid to pick this Falcons team on the road, playing outside, playing against Drake May, who has been the best deep ball thrower. Now, one key highlight, I will say that this Falcons defense has been giving up the fewest passing yards and the second fewest total yards. So this could be a little bit of a defensive battle, but no way in hell I'm picking the Falcons when they're playing outdoors. I like the Patriots 27-16.
Here's my thing with this game. I think Atlanta has these Jekyll and Hyde moments where you think you're high on them. They have a very impressive win, and then their doors get blown off by a much inferior team, and you're sitting here like, what the hell, right? Like, if this spread came out for this game a week ago before that Miami game, and knowing Michael Penix would be playing, I think this would be New England by 2.5, New England by 3, right? But now after that game, ballooned up to 5.5, and Atlanta, yes, has some offensive lineman injuries, but Bijan wholly ineffective in that game against Miami last week. But the thing is, against these Patriot linebackers, just slow-footed Neanderthals. They're good at pressing the run, but if you get Bijan into space against these guys, they have been awful in coverage all year long. So expect Bijan to have a bounce-back game and Kyle Pitts to be really good in the middle of the field, just picking on these linebackers. And I just think New England's been flying a little too high at this point in the year, beaten up on tomato can after tomato can after tomato can. They just had 3 straight games against teams that have 3 wins combined. So I think this is a game they fall a little bit back down to earth. Atlanta gets some juice getting Penix back, and this running game is able to elevate. They're able to expose these Patriots linebackers in space, and I think New England gets a wake up type of loss here. And I like the Falcons with the upset on the road. Give me Atlanta 27-24. Maybe I am stupid, but I see value where I see it.
All right, let's move on to another game. We have the 49ers going to New York to play the Giants. 49ers favored by 2.5 points, Lewis. And we saw this team last week go to Houston, and they could not get off the field defensively. Now, this week, you get to play against Jackson Dart without Cam Scadaboo. Of course, Malik Neighbors out for the season. Can you guard Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton? I think the 49ers will be able to muster that up. And then on the other side, Mac Jones, can you? He's going to have a lot of pressure in his face once again, but I don't think this secondary for the Giants is on the same caliber of the Texans. And so I think the 49ers will do just enough to eke out a win. I think they win this game at 23-20.
This Giants team, I think we have these moments in the seasons for some teams, right? Where things are looking up, you're building some momentum, and then a moment happens, and in that Broncos fourth quarter, that utter collapse following next week by the Cam Scadaboo injury, who's been, your biggest shining light outside of maybe Dart coming in after the Neighbors injury. Now Scadaboo out for the year, and then just all the bad vibes, angry Dayball on the sideline. I just think last week they gave up almost 300 yards on the ground to the Eagles. I think that McCaffrey, after being bottled up by the Niners last week, by the Texans, has a huge bounce back against this porous Giants defense, one of the worst rush defenses in NFL history so far this season. I think not only him, but Brian Robinson gets some burn in this game. I just think that they're not going to be able to defend, and this team is going to be hitting a big downward spiral. I think 2.5 points is a little disrespectful here to the Niners. I think the Niners get back on the winning track and win this game 33-10.
All right, let's move on to another great game. We have the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Las Vegas Raiders. The
Great.
Jaguars, 2.5 point favorites. Oh, and the news broke this morning. Travis Hunter placed on IR after suffering a knee injury in practice. And so it's going to be a lot on BTJ if he does return. The big thing for me, Devin Lloyd will be playing in this game back from injury. And there's no way in hell I can pick this Raiders team with Geno Smith at quarterback. Tied for the league lead in interceptions. I think he tosses a couple more in this one. I think the Jaguars find a way to win 29-23.
This is going to be the ugliest game of the week. I expect a lot of sloppy football. This Jaguars team that at the beginning of the season fed off of opponents' turnovers, I think gets more in this game, and they take advantage in this situation. I like the Jaguars and their rushing attack to get back on track here. Obviously, the Travis Hunter news, brutal, even though he hasn't been too impactful so far this season. But I think both these teams coming off a bye. Brock Bowers is returning in this game, which gives me a little bit of pause, but I am going with the Jaguars in this spot, 22-13 in this game. Next one up, we have the Saints traveling to the Rams. I have the Rams winning this one 33-10.
Yeah, I only have the words Tyler Shuck written down, and we know
Oh,
how rookie quarterbacks are in their first ever starts. Plus the Rams coming off a bye, plus you have to travel to SoFi. Maybe there's a lot of Saints fans in the
nightmare.
stands.
Hey, Rams fan. Whose house? Rams house this game.
Give me the Rams, 31-13.
All right, let's move on. Final game, we have Monday Night Football. The Arizona Cardinals coming off a bye, traveling to Dallas to face the Cowboys. Cowboys who got embarrassed last week defensively, but this team has been completely different home and away. They're just a part of the teams, Falcons, Panthers, Cowboys, who are just different teams on the road versus at home. Even this Cowboys defense has been a lot more impressive at home. And I just think all the hype and hoopla is going to be about Kyler, never lost in this stadium, coming back. He's going to have this huge offensive output. And I think a little bit of that is contributing to why the line is lower than it should be in this game. I think this Arizona defense just falls apart, gets picked apart by this Dallas offense, who's still hanging in there. This Arizona team has still had not had an impressive victory all season long. And I just think Dallas takes care of business here at home. Give me the Cowboys 33-23.
Yeah, the Cardinals have lost 5 games in a row. I think that streak continues on to 6. The Cowboys, like you mentioned, just a different beast at home. Dak Prescott is going to be carving up that secondary. And then on the other side, just Kyler Murray, he really hasn't had any juice all season long. Now he's coming back off an injury. Can he do enough to beat this high-powered Cowboys offense and keep pace with them? I don't think so. I think the Cowboys win at 34-20.
All right, Laraib. Well, that's going to do it for our picks of the week. Now let's get into our locks, upsets, and best bets of the week, Laraib. I'll start off with my lock. We just talked about it. I have the Dallas Cowboys beating the Cardinals, giving them their 6th straight loss. I just think this Cowboys offense, much better unit at home, and defense way better at home. I think Kyler has his first loss ever at Jerry World. Give me the Cowboys, my lock.
And for my lock, I'm going with the Seattle Seahawks coming off a bye, playing the Commanders on a short week. This is my let my nuts hang take of the week. I think they're being a little bit disrespected against the Commanders team from the year from hell. I think the Seahawks find a way to win on Sunday Night Football.
Arlo Robin, who is your upset of the week? Loud and proud.
I'm going with the TJ Watt led
Oh,
Pittsburgh Steelers in what is going to be a windy, rainy, cold game in
no.
Pittsburgh.
60
I
degrees
think
and
the
sunny.
elements become the 12th man in Pittsburgh and slow down the Colts
60 degrees and
offense.
sunny.
And I think the Steelers pull off the upset.
Interesting pivot. Hey, if Zeus himself comes down, I think Jonathan Taylor is still rushing for 203 touchdowns. My upset, Laura, is the Atlanta Falcons on the road. I just think that after how humiliating that last performance is, they're going to get a better effort here. Patriots riding way too high, haven't really faced a lot of adversity in this, against these shitter bots. And you can argue that Atlanta is one of those shitter bots, but I just think Atlanta gets back on track here. Bijan, huge bounce back game in this spot. Give me the Falcons with the upset.
All right. And then if we have our best bets, my best bet, I am going to go with your Dallas Cowboys -2.5. I just think there's no way in hell they lose this game, first of all. And then second of all, how can the Cardinals offense keep up with the Cowboys in match points? I think the Cowboys will cover their 2.5 spread.
Yeah, my best bet of the week, Detroit -9.5. I just think that line is at the perfect number below double digits to where JJ McCarthy's first game back against the front running showboaters. I just think this is an excellent spot here for the Lions to just put B2A for my guys who know that home. It's a profanity. I don't like cursing a lot on this podcast, so unless I'm talking about those shitter bots that the Patriots have played. So yes, I like the Lions covering the 9.5 point spread, Laura. And that's going to do it for our picks, best bets, locks, and upsets for the week. Now we have Robot Corner, Laura. Take it away.
We were going to do that, but listen, there are 7 home dogs this week in the
Okay.
NFL. And I think there's going to be a lot of interesting games where these home dogs will find a way by hook or by crook to win. The last 2 weeks have been a lot of
Chalk.
chalk, you can say. But I think this might be an interesting week halfway through the season. But no, before we head off, we will be talking on Tuesday about the new It Dairy series. And so 2 episodes will be out by then. So we will be tuning in or I don't know, podcasting about that if you guys would like to tune in.
Yep. All right. Well, anything else you got for us before we get out of here today?
No, I think that's the First and Goal podcast signing off.
Peace.